Welcome to the Dad Level Podcast, episode 20. This week we talk about films, television shows, and other media that influenced our lives and the world around us.
Well, I was thinking about how I'm always using the term Kobayashi Maru, from Star Trek, and it's kind of one of my, one of my tenets, if you will. I'm always thinking that there's always a way out of something. There's always a way to deal with something, and it's always Kobayashi Maru, even though technically Kobayashi Maru was the test in Star Trek, and Kirk found a way around it. That's what I refer to it as.
Yep, no win situation doesn't exist.
It's one of the longest standing things in my head from way back when I was a kid. And of course now Star Trek, has become another thing that just influences a lot of people. I mean, look at like flip phones were originally nicknamed
tricorders and stuff,
communicators. And they all the little micro technology that they had and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff is out there today. So it got me thinking, well, who else is? Obviously there's a generation of people out there who grew up watching this stuff, and they're out there making these, like the light plastic polymer stuff, and they're doing the 3D printed everything now. That kind of stuff. That's basically where the genesis of the idea came from.
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel called The Hacksmith I watch, and they've been working on the power loader from Aliens, and it's just great getting to see like any kind of update on what they're doing, because if anybody knows me, like, I know I've talked about this before, but I love mecha. I've always wanted it to exist in the real world, to be able to pilot a walking bipedal robot would be amazing. And that's all thanks to Robotech and Transor Z and Gundam and a lot of the other stuff I watched and collected at the time. But it's really cool seeing like how the engineering goes into making something like that work. And one of Dad's friends, Ray, was in an engineering class, and one of their projects was their whole team worked on what it would be like to engineer an actual mecha. And I remember seeing the design and everything, and then him talking about it. It was just awesome. I was like, man, I would love to do this stuff. But all the math that's involved and everything else, it's just life got in the way. I always tell Dad because I love designing stuff, robots and things, and I had drawn this like design for a android body, and I was like, Dad, I'm gonna make this when I get older for you. Never went that direction. And he's always like, every time he calls me and he's just having a bad day because of his health and everything, he's like, so where's my robot body, huh?
Well, closest we're getting is exoskeletons now.
Yes. Yeah. And
people who have never been able to walk or have been injured where they can't walk anymore are able to get mobility again because of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Japan has actually built the Gundam.
Oh yeah.
Gotta mention that.
Speaking of another thing that influences is like, anime and Ghost in the Shell, prosthesis and fully android bodies and stuff with cyber brains. Could be our future in some point in time if we go that way. But you could think about it, the implications of what that would help. People who are born paraplegic or missing arms and stuff, they would literally be able to have new bodies. Or say someone's in a car accident or shark attack, here you go. The technology's there, but we're not there. If the technology was there, we're still worried about oil.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, right, it goes, you still have the cases of like all the cyberpunk dystopia type stuff where even though the prosthetics exist, you still have to be able to afford it, right? It still turns into that whole, some people are going to be able to be walking around with, fully articulated prosthetics, and other people will still be stuck with, the basic, little hook grab deal, right?
Elvis glue and rubber bands.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, whatever allows you to get, mobility and that personal freedom back, even, by whatever inches, but it's that thought that it still goes back to that utopian slash dystopian idea of being able to give everyone, the perfect, response to a tragedy in their life, whereas the reality of, not everybody's going to quite have that access, right? But I like to think of, not that I grew up with it, but cyberpunk was something that I kind of stumbled on much later in life. But one of the stories that I read that was by a really great author who his short fiction's amazing. He wrote a little trilogy of books based on a place that he called the Boudin, which was, he took the French Quarter in Louisiana and just kind of transplanted it into a city in the Middle East, right? Just some kind of fake city in the Middle East. But what was cool about it, it wasn't the whole thing about, oh, we're, smuggling a floppy disk with, 35 kilobytes of data that has a code that can unwrite the world and all that, silly neuromancer type stuff. His was, it was all about messing with the brain, right? So people would have these little ports like up around their ears, and they could plug in different like personality modifiers. So you could have a chip that you would put in that would make you more aggressive. You could plug in a chip that would make you more timid. And then they had chips that would completely overwrite your personality whatsoever. So if you felt like waking up one day and being James Bond, plug in a chip and you are James Bond that day until you pop the chip back out. It was a really cool concept, and I kind of like that idea. Not that that's even remotely possible, really, and not that we're even close to that, but that would be a kind of a cool idea of taking it to that length, right? Of being able to not only go VR, but go into your own brain and kind of get you to imagine that you are a character kind of deal, right?
Well, then you're going into like the Matrix and Cyberpunk and Total Recall, or most of Philip K. Dick's books. But I know that a lot of my catchphrases and things I'll say, and when I'm around my friends, are usually from John Carpenter movies or anything I've watched that had a big influence in my life. It's like I have something that I can quote from a movie that just pops in my head because of whatever we're doing.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we are definitely very much in the vein of the pop culture reference, right? Generation, more so than I don't, and that's kind of a thing I wonder about. How much is that the case, right? Because like pop culture is so easily digestible now that it is so easy to reference it, because you're not having to go out and read a 800-page novel to then come back and throw out veiled references and see if people actually pick up on, oh yeah, you have read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, front to back all the way through, or something like that from back in the day. Now you can quote it and people will be like, oh yeah, that's that Peter Jackson movie, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so it does kind of make me curious about, because you go and you read some old literature, right? And there are people that reference other people's work all over the place, but I wonder how much that's become more infused in our culture from all this, not just in the scheme of how it's influenced our life, right? Like the creation of something like this coming from Star Trek, just being able to have a screen you can interact with and all that. But, just in general, this is something kind of interesting to think about that I don't think we actually have the ability to really, gauge. But thinking of references, the thing I reference probably more than anything is Major Payne with my kids. Just, I remember watching that movie so many times as a kid, and now it's just, I'll just randomly quote it whenever the kids are hurt. I'll be like, you want me to show you a little trick? Take your mind off that pain? give me a hand. And they've seen the movie, so they know that they're like, no, when they go running off. Or, boy, I'll be on you like white on rice and a glass of milk and a paper plate in a snowstorm. And I will put my foot so far up your ass, the water on my knee will quench your thirst. Just fantastic quotes. I love every last minute of that movie. And it's just, yeah, I'll just find myself randomly just throwing bits of that at the kids just out of the fun of it.
Well, and you wonder how far it's going to go, because at some point it's going to lose its meaning. Yeah, we're part of our society is just going to like adopt these things, but if they don't really know the reference, they only get it because of the reference and not actually what the original meaning behind it was.
Right.
Oh, sure.
So,
I mean,
everything.
everything.
It's we've become a disposable society, so anything that would, or a lot of things I should say, that would influence people or could influence people becomes outdated. Anywhere from a day to a week and on to the next thing.
mhm.
I mean, look at computers. They're upgrading them so commonly now that by the time you get one home, there's probably a new model that's leaving the factory. That's
Yeah.
10 times better.
And if you got the money to do it, yeah, you can jump on that bandwagon to keep. But that's a good thing about computers. You can be able to continue to upgrade your stuff and
Yeah.
to its peak performance. But yeah, it's just like driving a car off a lot too. You buy a car, immediately you take it off the lot, it depreciates. So even it could be a model for like the next year and it'll depreciate instantly.
And it does make me curious, like thinking about that, not just in the terms of, again, of the stuff, but like of just the impact of things in general, right? Like, the Green Knight just came out this past Friday. Haven't gone and seen it. I've read a lot of commentary on it. Supposedly it's really good. I really want to go see it. It's like, Arthur, right? I grew up reading a ton of King Arthur as a kid. And I remember there was all the movies of the kid in King Arthur's court. You had like Arthur references and a bunch of stuff. And there isn't a whole lot of that. I mean, there was that horrible, horrible Guy Ritchie movie a couple years ago. And every once in a while they'll trot it out a little bit, but it doesn't feel like it's quite as infused as it once was, right? It's not quite as open because we've I guess moved away from that, and we're moving, but it's been with us for so long. And then same thing like with John Carter, right? John Carter bombed with Disney, but he's the genesis of like every superhero that we can think of kind of sort of originates somewhere around John Carter and those guys. And it's like, but now we've moved away from that. It's like, I'm curious to see, who's going to take that next place. Cause like we still have like Tolkien and Lewis and all those guys still, held up as these great big pillars of writing and genre fiction. And it's like, I wonder, we won't know it now. It won't be till generations later that you'll even see, who's doing that groundwork now that will become the foundation later on down the line.
That's a good point. At some point, when does the literature and fiction and things in our lives that means something to us just mean nothing to the next generation?
Yeah.
You see that with the new He-Man. I mean, I haven't watched it, but it doesn't appeal to me. It's not for me. Yeah, it's got the gimmicks to like, oh man, that's eye candy for a kid who grew up watching the show and played with the toys like I did. But when the character the story is about is only in 2 episodes and you do what you do to him, that doesn't. I was watching somebody talk about it, and they had it's kind of like a little podcast, like like we do, and they were talking about how the fact that it's like that show was originally for kids, boys. There was She-Ra for girls, and then He-Man for boys. And then you think about the fact that like this is the perfect show to be able to, at someone my age, with my son, being able to show, hey, this is what I liked, and we can bond with this, but I can't bond with that. It's not designed for me and my son. So that's sad, because like I want to buy him the toys. He's the perfect age to get the toys for this stuff and to get him enrolled in, but it's not for him. So at what point do we I know Dad's talked about this before on the fact that you know, toys in general are not for kids anymore. They're for the collectors, and then you get the kids version of them. They're they cheap out on some of the transformation, so it's not really challenging for the child to be able to mess with them. They don't make them as sturdy, or there's holes in the figure,
Yeah.
have the arm, there's these little bit gaps, cheap lines, so it's they don't waste the plastic, so why? I mean, what's the point? This stuff used to be for kids, but now it's oh, making cartoons for kids to sell toys is bad, but kids need to be kids. They need to learn, but they need to have fun too. And that's the best way for us at this generation to be able to bond with our kids, because there's more toys out there that are mirrors of what we had when we were kids, and to be a great bonding tool for parents for their children. But you don't do that. You're making it for a demographic that doesn't really honestly care about this stuff. I finally got the Bumblebee Netflix figure, and I'm very happy to finally have that, because Bumblebee was my favorite Transformer. He still is my favorite Transformer. And it was hard for me watching the Michael Bay movies, and I don't mean to bring this up again for people who watch this, to watch my favorite character be portrayed like he was. And it's not good for my son, because, he's going to watch this and he's going to be like, oh, well, Bumblebee doesn't talk. He's kind of goofy, but that's not who really Bumblebee is. And that goes back to the whole thing we talked about before with Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes was a bad movie. If you took out G.I. Joe and Snake and all that stuff, it was one of those movies. It's a decent movie, but it's got so many MacGuffins in it, or it wasn't that bad, but it had a lot of MacGuffins in it. You took a character that was the heart of G.I. Joe and put him in a situation and had an arc for him that the character's never been in. That's not who that character is.
I just
I love
from the bits that I heard about it, it just seemed like they made it to where Snake Eyes was almost the villain of his own movie, and Storm Shadow was actually the hero.
And yeah, it's you live long enough to be the whole freaking either
that was
die the hero or live long enough to become the villain. And
I think that was one of my favorite reviews that I heard about it, was this entire group of people are being wiped out because Snake Eyes made this decision, and then he decides at the last minute, oh wait, no, I actually need to go save all these people. Meanwhile, Storm Shadow has been single-handedly fighting off all these people. And then it's oh yeah, Snake Eyes is just going to show up, and then he wins, and he's the hero, and then Storm Shadow's the bad guy. It's wait, no, guys, no, wait. Let's back up and take a look at the series of events that happened to this. But I mean, not to get off into all those tracks, but I mean, it's I kind of think about what I have found, right? Because I being at the point that I'm at with my kids, with my son being older, my daughter being midway up to where he is, right? Trying to find those things to bond over, right? I've been able to share Batman and all that with the kids, but I don't know that they would enjoy. I don't know. I don't know if I could just show them everything that I watched as a kid and they'd be invested in it, because I know they wouldn't. I'm a weird kid that whenever I was growing up, I watched Gregory Peck's Moby Dick, and I can watch that movie now. I love that movie. I can't explain to you why exactly. I just, for whatever reason, something about just the acting, the dialogue, the way everything unfolded. I love that movie, and I've tried to show it to my son before, and he'll watch up through about 15 minutes of it, and then he's out, right? He's gone. My daughter might watch it, but I have to give her up front, this is about a whale that's going to kill a lot of people that kill whales. And giving her that, then she's like, hell yeah, I'm on board, because those guys are a bunch of
Screw
buttholes.
humans.
Yeah, she's like, those guys are a bunch of buttholes for killing whales. But I don't think she would sit through the whole thing. I would just need to show her the end with Ahab, taking his last breath, stabbing at Moby Dick as he drowns, and then the boat getting swirled down to the bottom of the ocean, right? It's like, yeah, it's there, that sense where it's like they're trying to pander to our sensibilities of this is something that we had as a kid and wanting to see a new shiny version of it. But yeah, like I sat down and I watched the first 2 episodes of the new He-Man show, right? I thought, I'm gonna put away all the stuff I've heard about it, all the stuff I've thought about it. Maybe the character will win me over, right? Maybe there will be someone in the show that I can find, that I can latch onto, that I can kind of get behind. And I got through 2 episodes of it, and I was just thinking to myself, you know what? This is kind of just pre my time, right? I was never really big into He-Man. Like, I knew of him. I saw a couple episodes. I thought Skeletor looked really cool. I had the old Grayskull castle thing, right? Had a bunch of the toys when I was growing up, all that stuff. And just as I watched it, I thought to myself, you know what? There's other stuff that I haven't seen yet that I need to go finish. I need to go finish Invincible. I need to go watch some other stuff that I'm actually a little bit more invested in, that I would prefer to watch. Does that mean I can watch Invincible with my daughter in the room? No. But I can go turn on, Gravity Falls or some other show that we sat down and watched and bonded over because of just how good, right, that show was. And there was things in it that I found that I enjoyed, things in it that she found that she enjoyed. And it's like, yeah, we might not be able to share that same stuff that gives us those nostalgia feelings, at least not all of it, but there's definitely stuff out there that we can go out and find. And if they release something that we want to like, but we don't think we will because of changes and things that have been made to it, it's like, then just let it be. Let whoever is going to take down to that, go run with it. Hey, go have fun. I hope you enjoy this thing. And I'll just have to go find some other greener pasture to go play in.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it's not for me. I mean, I completely understand. I mean, like, I should be able to have my opinion of why I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
My dad told me he watched all of it and hated it. And he told me what was going on. I was like, yeah, I would hate it too, Dad. I as being a fan of He-Man, like I was back in the day, and I watching the 2002 series as well, this is not my He-Man. This is not for me. But it's my opinion, and I want to speak with my wallet. I don't like it. I'm not going to spend money on it. I'm not going to.
I mean, it's how shows that I liked died. Apparently, people didn't spend with their wallet on Young Justice and the Green Lantern, the animated series, and those things died. And then they brought back Young Justice, and they haven't done anything with my Lantern yet. But maybe that HBO show will finally get off.
What do you think? Like great shows that deserved. Back to one of our things, great shows that deserve sequels or movies. Like, I'm sorry, but the 90s Flash needed another season. But unfortunately, because it was set right when, was it the MLB playoffs and everything, and people were like, well, we want to watch this more than the show. The ratings tanked. But it was a great show. It needed more. And I would have loved, I mean, as much as I like the new Flash show, I mean, I want that one better. I like that one better because it had that tone, like the 90s Batman movie or the 89 Batman movie, the 90s cartoon show. It had that feel. And I felt that Henry Allen, what is it, whatever his name is, the actor who played the, I know his name with my plane. I'm going to put it in. I'm going to edit and go.
John Wesley Shipp?
Huh?
John Wesley Shipp?
Yes, yeah. I felt he was the better Flash than the new current Flash. But neither one of them are, actually, blonde-haired or gingered, depending if you're playing Wally or Barry.
Right.
But it's...
Yeah. It's just like, it's just one of those things that it is what it is. But it does make, again, it makes me curious, right? It makes me curious because... I do think about, like, I don't really, I can't really think back to times when movies and things outside of references really spoke a great deal to me. It's always just like, not specifically, it's always just kind of been like stories and concepts that I just like from stuff, right? Like now, I've never really been a big fantasy buff, and I wonder sometimes how much of that is because I grew up reading a lot of Arthur, and Arthur doesn't have high magic, right? Like there's Merlin, and there's dragons, and there's things, but it's all the subtle magics. It's all potions and little spells that just kind of change people or put them to sleep. It's not, giant fireballs flying out of people's hands and sprays of acid and all that crazy nonsense, right? It's like, so and I almost think sometimes about how Arthur in a lot of ways it feels almost dystopic in the way that it unfolds, right? Like, magic feels like it's dying out of the world in the old Arthur stories. He passes on to Avalon, they throw Excalibur back into the lake, and you get this sense of finality almost to the magic of that world. And it kind of plays into like Jack Vance's Dying Earth and all those stories. And that's a good example of something that came out and has had a huge effect on tons of stuff, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons' entire magic system is Jack Vance's Dying Earth, right? It's the idea of memorizing spells and then using them, and because of the nature of their power, they just kind of burn themselves out of your brain, after using them, and you got to go back and relearn them again, the morning or the night before, reprogram all that stuff in your brain so you can go about it, right? It's like, how many people actually know that Jack Vance and the Dying Earth, and how many people have actually read that series or any portion of it, or even the authors that have put out anthologies about it? It's like, that's affected D&D, which affected, tons of game designers, which it's like that just cascades out throughout so much stuff. And it's growing beyond what it was into what it is and what it's going to become. And again, just one of those things that I constantly like to think about sometimes, of just trying to figure out, like, man, where's it all going, right? Where's the culture and the ideas and what people are grasping onto, and what's really hitting that zeitgeist, and what's going to stay.
Well, that sense of wonder, that want to create, regardless, having that canvas, that white canvas, to do whatever you want, to create whatever you want, that world, that masterpiece that, in the eye of the beholder may be crap, but to you, or maybe a certain group of people, that may be the thing that like gives them inspiration to want to create and find their own voice and move forward with that spark, that energy that we used to have when we were kids. It's like, I used to draw all the time. I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, robots, all this stuff. And, I had great inspiration. I had my Uncle Colin, I had my dad, great artists, they're always telling me how to get better and do these things. Anime in my life, learning to like draw my favorite characters and stuff. It was one of those things that I had a big passion for. I would sit there in class, be studying or doing my work, and then I'd be sitting there drawing. People are like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What's that? What's that, Dragon Ball, or is this or whatever? And just like the creativity to do anything. And as life gets in the way sometimes, or you got to find your way back. It's, I used to play video games to escape or to get more out of things that I couldn't get in life. A lot of the reasons why I got into role-playing games is because we played role-playing games all the time. And I wanted to role play all the time. I enjoyed that interaction, the building these great epic worlds and these characters, and then going to we would do it for like weekends on end. And then my dad couldn't do it, or Colin moved away, or Mark was in military and stuff, or time progresses. You just don't have the time. Everybody's older now. And, so I would play Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger and, all these Shining Force, all these great RPGs besides other games, because it was a way to like go into those stories again. And,
right.
You know, it was, to me, it was like, yeah, okay, it's turn based. No, to me, it's not turn based. It's what I do when I role play. You have to take turns to play. You know, you like,
Right.
you're playing with 12 people. Everybody's got to take a turn, and then it goes back over again until you beat that guy, and then, or the monster group of monsters you're working on. But I loved playing games. I mean, I loved, like, when we used to go out and go to Bay Area Park and have water balloon fights and with water guns, or you know, we would go out to some of the parks with my dad's wooden practice bokens and sit there and sword fight. And that's what I want to do for Edward. And it's just so hard to be able to find the time to do it. And, you know, coming home from late from work because you're doing all this stuff, and I just got to find the time. And that's why I started doing those podcasts, because I needed something to be creative. I'm still having time with my son, but I want to do more. And that's why, you know, hopefully once things get a little bit better and my wife finishes school, and it can be not so much of a burden on me, and we can start doing a lot more and show Edward the world. That's my big thing and he's my inspiration. And I got to find that again. That's why I started doing this, because I needed something to be creative, because I went to school for film and didn't achieve anything out of it because life got in the way.
Yeah, and it does that. But yeah, I do think that's important to consider, right? Is having that open sense of creativity and being encouraged to get beyond, because, you know, like what you're saying, Colin, with how, you know, that kind of gets brought up a lot, of how Star Trek has kind of influenced a lot of the stuff that we have now. But I think I brought this up before, but there's a good little series of what's the word for them? I guess talks. It was some speeches and things that an author named Warren Ellis gave at a couple different areas, and he ended up putting them together in kind of like a little collection of books. And he talks about how you know, everything that we have right now is so much greater and grander and better than what was in the old Star Trek shows, right? Like the communicators you had to flip open, and now we have, you know, a thing in our hands. It's this little bitty magic tablet that we can tap on with our fingers, and even they couldn't really do that. I forget what else he added in there. It was like they had to have like dial in, or there was Wi-Fi, or there was some portion of it that was still an analog portion to what eventually became an almost totally digital format, right? That even the imagination of the people who created the show at the time couldn't imagine great enough to encompass what we have now, right? What we actually utilize in our day-to-day, you know, lives. And kind of like what you're talking about, right? Where there's people out there who are building up these awesome robots. There's a dude who has a functioning jetpack, right? Yeah. That he goes around and flies around all over the place because he can. It's like, yeah, guys, we made it. We have jetpacks now, right? Like that was the joke for the longest time. Like, hey guys, it's the 2000s. Where are my jetpacks? Well, guess what, guys? It's 2021. Some dude's got a jetpack.
Yeah, like there's a couple people.
Yeah, where's my hoverboard? Where's my flying car? Which is my dad's always big thing.
Yeah.
Right, but we're getting there, right?
Yeah,
we are actually getting there. That's the crazy part about it. It's like, yeah, it took about, 30, 40 years longer than everybody thought, but we're getting there. I don't know if we'll ever actually get to the point where I can just kind of like wake up in the morning, go take a shower, and then go step in a pod that's hooked up in my garage, and then
teleport to work. That's what I want to
digitize down and then digitize back, and I walk into the office. Right? I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. It'd be cool. It'd be so nice because traffic is a nightmare. But
if the wrong calculation could send you back into the past, and you could be eaten by a dinosaur, and then we all speak a total different language going forward.
There you go.
But yeah, no, it's one of the things I wanted to bring up is the fact that, like, being somebody that, was premature, I was behind in school a little bit because I had to learn to adapt to my surroundings and grow more into myself because I was almost 2 months premature. And it's playing video games helped me learn to be a better reader. I didn't like reading, because being at home with a single, a father that, was working all the time and could do what he could to help us out. I didn't get the attention I needed, like most kids have, where they have two parents, but my dad did everything for us, sacrificed everything for us, and made sure that we were a big part of his life. And I didn't play video games to escape, but I always felt like, I did, but I felt like, because everything was done in the world and I wanted to go fight dragons and I couldn't do that in real life. So I'm going to go play a video game where I can, it's when you have a vivid imagination, you always want to kind of
Right.
on it.
It also
It's
helps
fun
with
'cause-
dry hand coordination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was funny to hear all the talks about when the Wii first came out and they started putting them into old folks' homes, right? To get the old folks
Yeah.
more mobile, right? And so you had like all those videos of all the old grandparents like standing around in front of a TV playing like Wii boxing and all that, and they're just kind of flailing at the screen. But hey, they were up and moving and mobile, and at least doing something. It's like, yeah, right. That's the first steps of innovation, right? It's the first baby steps into, okay, we're developing something that will begin to help people more and more, right? I still remember whenever the Kinect first came out, somebody took like 30 of them and put them all together and programmed them into this crazy motion capture, right, system, just from basic Kinects that he was able to piece together on his own. It's like, yeah, it's a really awesome ingenuity that, again, it's like we're in this state where, there's so much amazing crap constantly around us that, going to what you're saying of not really having the time to interact with our kids. Well, how many of us are really aware of like all the crazy leaps and bounds outside of just the newest graphics card out there that's that there's so many other greater, techs that are building up and turning into these awesome, society changing type functions, right? It's like, the Tesla and all that stuff with the electric cars and how that's been coming along, and, autopilot still seems to have a ways to go, but it's like, I still would love to have an autopilot that's more in line with Total Recall of the weird dummy that has the
the first one, not the remake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the remake doesn't exist to me. No, the original one
I'll
with
fix
the
that
weird,
posting.
funny looking dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It's like, yeah, you know what?
Hey, David, hold on. All right. Hold that thought. So whenever I said that, you just started like the camera just went slow, and you looked like you were freaking out, raging.
Oh crap! No,
So
my bad.
Glitched out bed.
yeah, it was hilarious. I'm gonna have to send it to you. It's funny.
Oh crap! Yeah, I'll have to see that. Holy crap!
I'm gonna take it out, but it was funny.
That's fun. Man, that's weird. I haven't had a bad signal day in a while.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully it's not on my end, but just to piggyback off what you're talking about, it's funny because, us growing up, I know with my dad and like the generation before him, it was like, what did you think of the future is going to be? Flying cars and all this other stuff. And it was like, for us, it was like, for me anyway, I always thought that we would have like space stations and moon colonies and on the moons with giant robots doing like all these different things, and but it's like now it's, what do you think the future is going to be? Technology is going to go, hopefully, if we don't destroy ourselves from it. I don't mean to get into like a political philosophical kind of discussion here, but it's like, where are our dreamers? Where are the ones that like want to create new stuff and talk about it? That stuff isn't in the limelight right now, and it should be. Hey, this kid created this, robot and won this, award at this, science project or whatever. We need to encourage things like that to move forward instead of focusing on the things that don't matter. The grand scheme of things.
I mean, it's the quick little sound bites, right? I mean, all those people still exist, right? There's still science projects and all that are blowing people out of the water. There's still innovations being made every day. There's still little kid geniuses that are going out
Right.
there and putting together formulas that, we never, we could never dreamed of, and imagining things that we could never hope to accomplish. And I mean,
Mm.
we're already talking right now about putting a base on the moon, right? So they can do the hop to Mars and all that stuff. It hasn't happened yet, but they're talking about it like they could actually do it in the next handful of decades. It's like,
Well, and that's a big thing right now, is the fact that, this should be actually something we should really kind of like cherishing, or like, praising, even though it doesn't really matter who the person who did it. But like, we just had the first really like personal person build his own ship and then go into space.
it only took him being the richest man on the face of the earth. But
and that's the thing, is that technology, to do something like that, from the 50s, I mean, everybody has now. You just gotta have the money for it. It shouldn't be that much to try something like that. You think of the movie like Explorers, of course, they created that whole, they got the code from the aliens to create that sphere that they were around in. But, they really had an imagination to try to do something different, and to actually try to do something like that. Of course, it's a film. That's one of the things that, like, that movie, Goonies and Monster Squad, it just builds this imagination of kids to like want to try to do things.
Yeah, it was a really big sense of adventure, right? And again, I think some of that still exists, right? It might not be quite as grand, but it's still, the, like Moana, right? Moana was one of the first Disney princess movies in a while that I didn't hate, because it didn't fall into the same Disney princess formula of, oh, my daddy says I can't do something and that makes me upset, and so I'm gonna go do it, and then it's gonna cause trouble. And her whole thing was that, she had this calling, but there's a whole song about her, understanding that even though she has this calling, she's going to be content where she's at, because she has all these people that depend on her. And so she's going to go and take care of these people and do what's best for her people. And it's not until her people are threatened that she then bucks the system and says, no, we have to break out of this rut that we're in. We have to break out of this formula and this malaise and this just, this lax state that we're in, and break out of that shell and go and fix this problem, right? Like that was a movie, that one of the first movies I'd seen in a while that really embraced that idea of
really great movie.
going out and adventuring and solving a problem. It's like, yes, I want more of this, not just some girl complaining in her ice castle about how her life is hard. I want to see someone actually go out and do good things and do great things and like be a hero, because that's, by the end of that movie, that's what Moana is. She is a classic idea of a hero. She went out on this hero's journey. She, overcame all these obstacles. She defeated the villain in the end, albeit, not through combat, but through a completely different means. But it's still the same idea and the same concept. And it was such a good and well executed in such a good and well executed way. And it was like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that, that you look for and you want, right? That's the kind of things that I look for with my kids, right? To try and encourage them to get into those things, right? To really embrace those ideas, right? It's like back with my daughter, like all the princess movies I try to encourage her to watch. There's like Beauty and the Beast, where you have Belle, who's well read and chases off into the forest in the night to go save her dad when all the townspeople are being a bunch of dicks. It's like she herself goes out and is like, no, I'm going to throw myself at the mercy of this horrible monster for the sake of my dad. It's like that kind of stuff is what you need, is what should be encouraged. And it's like, you still get that a little bit with, the superheroes and all that. But at the same time, it's like with the new Mulan movie, she can't be a normal person going off and doing these grand things. She has to have superpowers. It's like, yeah, superpowers are cool. And superpowers make for great stories, but not every story needs to be superpowers. Not every story needs to be, that larger than life aspect of the character. Sometimes you need grounded characters doing great things
So
to accomplish them.
yeah, exactly. That's that whole thing of having it to where you have a character that is relatable to your audience. That's why Peter Parker, even though he had his spider powers, he was an everyday kid with normal problems, you know? So it's like, even though he had superpowers, he couldn't fix his problems at home with his Aunt May and, you know, saving his Uncle Ben and all that stuff. He couldn't do any of that stuff because we all struggle. So it's like, why can't you? I don't know. It means more when you have a character that has more to lose, go through the struggle and triumph than someone who has like the edge to do it. But, you know, that's why, was it like Luke Skywalker, and, you know, he was just a farm boy that had no idea that he had this connection and lineage. But that didn't like change his mindset of what he was doing. You know, he did what he needed to do because that was what he needed to do.
Right. Him having what I always like to refer to as super crazy magic blood as being the, you know, the catalyst for so many old stories, because that's always boiled down to, right? It was always some person who started with nothing, and then it turns out that they have this huge epic lineage standing behind them that catalyzes them into greatness. It's like,
Well,
yeah, that's cool and that's great, but at the same time, it's like, absolutely right. They start at a low point, right?
started
Arthur
local.
starts as a squire, pulls out a sword to go give it to his brother who needs one because he forgot it back at home, and he's like, "Hey, here you go!" And boom, from that moment, right? Then it's like, "Oh, no, this kid is greatness," and then takes off from there. It's like, you know, not to down superhero stories, because, you know, I still love DC, and DC's always treated as more of the grandiose of the big two, right? With Marvel being the more grounded, realistic, troubled heroes and all that stuff, and DC being the more, you know, bright beacons in the sun kind of deal. But it's like, you need both of those things. You need the big epic type characters to aspire to, but it's also great to have the good grounded ones that really give you that idea that you can strive for kind of deal. But I mean, yeah, it's like so many things really play into who people are, how they react to every little thing.
And that's that whole thing going back to, like, you know, G.I. Joe, I mean, the Snake Eyes origin. How can you not just tell a good story? I mean, keep in mind, I love the characters. Like, the actor they got to play Storm Shadow was great. I mean, there was a lot of greatness in this movie. But the problem was is that you put the character that is the heart of the show and you make him, you know, bad guy. He's just, you know, his whole thing is driven by revenge. And but also it goes back to the whole thing of like Dredd versus Judge Dredd. You know, you have Stallone, you cast an air. I mean, Henry Golding was great. He's not Snake Eyes, but he was great for the character they were trying to envision as Snake Eyes. But that's the problem, is you get a good actor to play a character that he's a face. He's not going to want to wear the mask at all. Of course, he's not going to want to not speak in the movie. So it's like you cast Stallone as Judge Dredd. That was a great casting, except for the fact that he wears the helmet in what? How many scenes in the movie? How many minutes? And that's it. Versus like Carl Urban with Dredd, he wears the helmet the whole time. You need somebody that will portray the character correctly versus somebody that is just a good actor and you're trying to cater to a certain market. You know, it was just a generic movie. That's the problem, and that's why it's bombing right now. It's not doing well. It's not. They're not going to get a sequel out of it. You know, if Hasbro would have just did what they needed to do and stick to formula with the character, just updated it to modern times, you still could have had somebody play the character, but you need someone that's going to want to play the character and do right by the character. Because, you know, for one, you know, I'd rather not sell my soul to the devil to have a GI Joe movie just so I can have my toys that I want. Screw that. I'm like, I'd rather not have anything and not have a bad movie. How hard is it to do a good war movie, with dealing with terrorists? I mean, there's been a lot of movies like this that have worked successfully.
Yeah, but it kind of goes to, so like fiction, and as everything happens in cycles, right? It's like I'm curious, right, about what right now we're in the middle of all the superhero stuff.
Mhm.
And I am kind of curious when we get back to more sci-fi, right? Like Interstellar came out, and I loved Interstellar.
So,
Right? There's a lot of people that have problems and things with that movie, but it was such an interesting idea to take and to go that route with it. And I know that Disney tried things with the Tomorrowland, and I didn't hate that movie. I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it well enough, and then it just kind of died on the vine. But it's like,
the movie.
What is encouraging kids these days? And the more I think about it, when I was talking with some friends of ours over this past weekend, it really isn't fiction as much anymore, right? It's all the YouTube videos they're able to go and watch, and they're able to see these people design and build, right? Like Colin, what you were saying with all the 3D printing you can do, right? And someone has this great idea of how to 3D print something together, and they go out and they do it, and they do what was the thing that my son was showing me the other day. I can't think of the guy's name. He's the one who created that glitter bomb package.
Mark Rover.
Yeah, Mark Rover, and he went out and created this like giant elephant toothpaste.
Oh yeah. That
Explosion thing. And it's stuff like that, right? It's almost like we have moved beyond. Kids have almost moved beyond the idea of what we lived with, right? Which was more of a cerebral. This is the general idea of something, and then kids have more and more access to people actually going out there and doing the physical effort of the act, right? Like it's not just the, oh yeah, I know that if I combine these couple things, this is the effect that's supposed to happen. Now you can actually go watch a video of a guy putting all that stuff together, doing it this way, and then saying, oh yeah, and here's the math, and if you multiply it out this way and do it that way and blah, 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 you could do one, 100,000 times bigger, and then they go show you what that looks like.
Remember back in school, you would sit there and your teacher's teaching you how to do like these math equations, and it's like, well, what am I going to do with this in my real life? Well, you'll find out, you'll figure it out. No, most of us don't actually figure it out. None of it's ever really used, unless like you're in the age now where, hey, you're learning these concepts in school, and you're watching Mark Rover or some of these other people that do these great builds. Oh man, I could do this? Really? Bam, somebody's, taken off to make the next whatever project that, was not in the, in the possibilities of us being able to create now. But we sparked that inspiration for them to want to continue to do it. And I wonder, like for Edward, he likes doing stuff creative, but I need to start trying to actually really have more hands-on with him for drawing. I'm finding the time to draw with him, to show him what it's like. His uncle Daniel can play almost any instrument, and it's like one of the great things that I want Edward to learn is music. That's one of those things that music can get you through anything. It can take you on a roller coaster of emotions that can bring in memories or future ideas, and take you down a dark path, but then bring you right back up to the skyline. So being creative is the biggest thing that I want him to be. Having no limits to what the possibilities that he could achieve. Colin, anything like you could think of that you that influenced you as growing up, or how you did with your kids and things that you want them get influenced by?
Well, outside of the sci-fi stuff, one of the big things that influenced me growing up was comedy, British comedy, particularly Monty Python, the Goodies, stuff like that.
Faulty Towers and
Well, not necessarily all that stuff. The stuff that was readily shown.
here
That,
more than
basically it was the more notable stuff, not just the everyday fare that you can get like on BBC America and stuff.
Mhm.
But definitely those two had helped shape how I look at things. It's not only my sense of humor, but it also gave me a bit of a warped and dark perspective on things. But I can always, even at the worst times, I can throw out some kind of off-color joke or something like that, and either make myself laugh or make somebody else around me laugh a little bit. So that was always one big thing, and that's something that's passed on to all my kids. All 5 of my boys, they're bizarre. All 5 of them. I love it. I love it. I mean, they all go out and do their normal jobs and whatnot and everything, but at their core, they're all a little touched, and I love it.
Oh yeah, growing up with you guys and stuff, and I know that my buddy Jason was the one who got me into Red Dwarf when it was coming on.
Oh yeah,
I love Red Dwarf. But for I'm trying to think, because there was a couple of things I had when you're talking about stuff. I know music, of course, music was a big influence in my house. Queen and AC/DC and ELO and Don Henley,
the
Beatles, all that stuff. It was one of the things that you just like put on and like zone out.
Well, I can say music has definitely inspired me.
Mm-hmm. I just remember like I love going over to y'all's house and stuff, or whenever we would visit Tony and stuff, and him playing on his drums and everything, and just listening.
Yeah.
There
was always there's always musicians, and always if we weren't playing music, we were playing music. That's I guess that's one of the things my dad passed down to us.
Mm-hmm.
We had such a love for music that there was very little that we didn't listen to, and there was very little that didn't influence something that we did or still do.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the crazy things. Again, thinking on a weird, like way over the top level. It's like music is, it's not like we've added new notes or anything to the system. It's just like every new group of people just finds a new way of manipulating the sounds and changing and how to organize it and all that. That it's like we're not hearing Bach and Beethoven over and over and over and over and over again, right? It's like there's always new invention. There's always some new thing, and I'm never going to listen to a Taylor Swift breakup song, right? But I'll sit there and jam out to synthwave as I'm working, because I can't have words in my brain while I'm trying to work. But it's like
type of work really for me. But yeah, I get you, because that's one of those things. It's like I can listen to synthwave, but if like I'm working on something that's like repetitive, so I'll put on podcast or whatever. But
still, it's like it's a cool thing to think about, that like even as far away from as far as we've gotten into it, we're still like innovating and musing. Yeah, there's people out there that take the easy route and they just sample a bunch of old songs and scramble them together and come out. But even that, right? It's a remix. You're remixing all this stuff together to make it your own.
Right. It's somebody being influenced by something before them, and that's their way of showing.
Yeah.
Right.
Appreciation for it. Yep.
Yeah.
So
and
one of the things,
the way it's recorded, sorry.
Yeah.
The the way the music is recorded and distributed, that's become a new thing. You know,
Right.
10 years ago, it was really hard. It was all making cassettes and CDs and stuff like that. Now, you know, you got something you create, boom, you can make an MP3 of it. You can put it up on any number of
SoundCloud
sites.
or any of the, yeah, any of the,
Yeah, you can make a video of it, put it up on YouTube. You can self-distribute. You can express yourself a lot faster without having to make that 1 in a million shot to get signed by a record label to get it to be heard.
yeah, easily.
It's more instantaneous and more instant gratification of it.
You know, and one of the things I was going to say that like media helped me get over things was like, I was, as much as you guys know, I'm very outgoing, but when I'm around people I don't know, I'm very shy and I can get like high anxiety. And, you know, being able to do this helps a lot. But, you know, being in the job I was in where I'd have to present and do things, I got over a lot of that, but I still have it. It doesn't like go away. You just have to work on getting used to it, that you know the signs and you just move past it. You know, it's another reason why I wanted to do this too, is because like I remember sitting in my speech class and stuff and having to do a presentation in front of like this corporate board that we got selected for. I'm like, my legs shaking, I'm nervous, and I was like, I just read what I needed to read, and they're like, yeah, you did a really good job, but I felt like crap, you know. And that's probably why I didn't like pursue theater. I like being the stagehand or like writing things, but I wasn't one of the ones that wanted to be up front acting, you know. Even when I was going to school for film, it was like I wanted to do directing instead of like being in front of the camera. I want to be behind it.
Right.
Because just that's one of the things I never could get over. I mean, I've gotten over time, but you know, everybody has it. Just some people have to learn how certain ways to deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like my wife, she's almost never met a stranger, right? We'll be standing in, but she's the opposite of me, where when I get nervous, I completely shut down. When she gets nervous, that's when she starts talking the most, right? She'll just chew your ear off. If she's nervous, we'll be standing in a line, right? Trying to check out somewhere, and she's just kind of waiting for them to scan the stuff, and she'll just start asking people about their day, their life. And before long, it's been, you know, 20 minutes, and all of a sudden we know the entire backstory of the cashier and all this stuff. And meanwhile, like at my job now, I have to be upfront to our clients, answering questions, eating crow on my mistakes, trying to find solutions, all that. And it's like dealing with that has almost developed. I've always had a little bit of speech impediments here and there, right? I have a stutter that shows up every now and then in the little things, but man, it gets pronounced when I'm under duress at my job. I will just sit there, I'll be talking, my whole mouth will just seize up for a second, and I just have to sit there and chew on it for a second and then fight through it and then keep talking. It's like, it's not something that I can really control, right? And I don't know if it's gotten better. I don't think it has, because it still shows up at such at very important times. But it's like it's understanding that, you know, that's at least something that is there, but it's fighting through. And you know, like you said, you just got to learn to deal with it. And sometimes you have it, but you just got to push through and answer what, you know, do what you got to do, right? That's at the end of the day, that's all that really matters, is that the job gets done, and it gets done mostly right, and nobody gets hurt at the end of the day. And I mean, that's what it really boils down to. But
Yeah, I mean, I talk to VPs and all that stuff all the time. It's funny. I sent in an email because we're doing a test for pushing out like 365 to a group of people, and I didn't put the time and date that we were going to do this. I just like sent the email. I was like, oh man. So I went and did this, and it didn't really bother me. I was like, oh, and it was like my whole team just saw I didn't do this right. Whatever. So as like the users are asking me, it was only like 25 people and stuff. I just like, it's going to happen at this time. I resubmitted it. And it's just like, it happens. We make mistakes. We're human.
Yeah.
It's all a learning journey. And that's the one things I want to teach for Edward, to make sure that like when he gets upset, or he'll break down, or if he's, of course, most kids do that, but if he's in the wrong or does something wrong, he's like, he completely shuts down. It's like, buddy, you can't do that. If you did something wrong, you need to kind of own it and deal with it, because unfortunately people aren't going to be as receptive to what's going on, and you're going to have to learn to deal with it and stuff. And we just try to work with him all the time on that stuff. And it's hard because, being a, almost 7-year-old kid during a pandemic, and, you haven't had friends because you've moved schools and you've been on virtual. It's totally different than what it was when we were growing up. We had people that lived next door to us. We lived in apartments, and hey, you're a kid. I like what you're playing with. Let's talk and have fun. And we need a little more of that as adults now. It's like, oh, you like this? That's awesome. Instead of, oh, you made a mistake, I'm gonna burn you. And it's like, come on, man. We're adults. We don't need to do that stuff. I mean, and that I don't say this for like, the people that do things really wrong, but like, if you say a name wrong, or maybe you have a different opinion on pop culture, come on. We all got along. We still get along. We should. We all have different interests. And maybe it's like one of those things where like, I didn't like something, but David shows me, or my Uncle Colin, or my other friends and everything, hey, it's like, oh wow, I didn't even know this. This is really cool. I thought this was dumb.
Yeah.
It's funny because it goes back to that whole thing that we were talking. I was showing you guys earlier, but not in the podcast, about the Turtles, Power Rangers crossovers and stuff. We're talking about what colors we think that the actual Rangers of the Turtles should be and all that stuff. But it's like, I was never a fan of Power Rangers. The funny thing is like, when I first saw Power Rangers, it wasn't Power Rangers here because it didn't exist. It was Super Sentai, but what it was the Dynaman episodes, like 5 episodes that was it Night Flight put together, where they redubbed it with hilarious comedy. And I remember watching that with my dad and Colin and all them and stuff, and I was like, this is the one I know, versus what we got here in the States, where it was American actors and bad teen dramas fighting monsters and stuff in the city. But what, my friends, some of my friends love Power Rangers. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. But I've learned to appreciate it more than when I was younger, and I was like, this is dumb. It's just like live action Voltron. But the animation for the transformation is awesome. But then they have these guys in these suits. They don't put all the production value into the suits. This is horrible. And I just, as a kid, it's like you have a certain, style you want to see, or a preference, and you see someone doing it, it's like, oh, this is awful. it was like, I don't know. I remember like the whole animation where the Zords come out and everything, and they transform and everything. That's awesome. Why can't it be stop motion? Why can't it be like the Thunderbirds cartoon? Or I mean the TV show.
Team America.
Yeah. World Police. Anyway. But it's, I guess the one thing is like, the great thing that films and movies and video games have done for me is my friends, and being able to be a gateway to make new friends. I miss some of the ones that I used to hang out with, that I may be friends with Facebook and stuff. We have totally different lives, but things get in the way. But hey, I'm still here. I wouldn't mind hanging out. All it takes is a phone call, and that's not saying people need to call me, but it's one of those things. It's like, even for us as people, sometimes we get detached from things, and that's why I collect, is to be able to have that memory of what it was and what it can still be if we choose to. So just pick up the phone and make the call, but that's one of the things that I think influenced me the most. Was it was a gateway to a lot of my friends, and really cool adventures and fun things. And that's one of the memories that I hope that I always have. And you know, my son gets to have, you know, his own, making friends, having them come over, stay the night, you know, me showing them stuff that to do that to relive basically what my dad did for me and my sister.
I mean, that's what it does for all of us, right? It's like, you know, I think about it, and like everything I've ever tried to ingest or take in has always just been for the stories, right? But not just for the stories themselves, but then to kind of imagine and wonder about the different interactions between them, and how they could grow and change and all that, and then applying those same ideas to other things. Like we were coming back from a road trip, right, just the other weekend, and on the ride home, we were listening to a podcast that was all talking about various different legends and forms and or legends and kind of oddities. It's in fact called Southern Oddities. It's just this little 10 to 15-minute podcast talking about weird stuff that's happened in the South of, you know, of the Southern United States, right? And just from a small little snippet of an episode, I heard a part where it was talking about a guy who was going to try and kill his son because this crazy cult he was a part of was saying that the seventh sons are evil and you have to kill them. And so he put his kid in a shed, and then his neighbors stopped him. I'm like, how did his neighbors stop him? Did he like go tell them what he was going to do? And they said, you shouldn't do that. And so we created this whole character of a guy talking to his neighbors about how he stuck his son in the shed, and then it morphed into how he stole some other guy's son and put him in the shed. And then it just kind of grew more and more. Every time we listened to a new episode, we found a new way to fold a new layer onto this character. And it's like all of that really is just from all those stories and things that I've just taken in. And so I got to share that, you know, with my family on the whole, you know, couple hour in drive. Instead of us just sitting there listening to music or someone else tell a story, it was we were listening to someone tell a story, but at the same time it was crafting your own and creating this idea out of all these other ideas. And it's like that more than anything is you know, goes back to that creativity and that imagination you were talking about before, right? That's really what I hope to impart to my kids, of just understanding that, like, hey, here's all these things, but you know, here's a different way you can look at it. Here's a way that you can expand on some minute little thing that, you know, maybe you might have missed. And it's funny because now it's gotten to the point where my kids will point out things to me and movies and stuff that I completely missed. And they'll be like, hey, look at this weird thing that they put in this movie. And we'll go back and we'll pause and be like, oh my gosh, I completely missed that. And then from that moment, we'll create this, you know, weird idea of, yeah, that's obviously what this means. And then it'll become this whole background character to whatever it is that we're watching. It'll never show up again, but it's a running joke, right, between us. And that's really what becomes awesome about it.
Colin, anything to add?
No, you guys said it beautifully. I mean, you guys nailed it. I'm the old guy who remembers a lot more than I should. And you know.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna hopefully be. All right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode of that little podcast. Tell us what thing in your life was influenced or changed by the media you watched. You know, tell us your story, let us know, and have a good one.